Welcome back to another episode of Beyond Rockets. In this episode, I sit down and talk with the owner of The Vessel, a community ceramic studio for individuals in the Huntsville area seeking a place to rest, escape, and make discoveries through the therapeutic process of ceramics. First off, thank you for taking the time to sit down and talking with me. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Absolutely. First of all, thanks for having me. My name is Jordan Brummett. I am a local ceramic artist, and I am originally from Illinois and have a degree in art education with an emphasis in ceramics.
So you said you're not originally from Huntsville. Did work or family bring you here? Did you already have family here? Did a job bring you here? So how did you kind of end up in Huntsville?
So my now husband, when he first graduated school, he had a physics degree, and it just made sense to move to Huntsville to try and find work. So he did. And then he ended up moving back to Illinois so that we could get married. And then, a few years later, work brought him back. So we then had a baby on the way and a 2-year-old daughter when we came back.
Okay, there we go. So when did you first get interested in pottery? Is that something that you've been interested in throughout your whole life, or is it something you got interested in college? And kind of how'd you get kind of into this idea of opening up a ceramic studio?
So I like saying that my story starts back. I grew up on a farm in small town Illinois, and one of my core memories, if you will, is playing outside on our farm with my sisters with the mud. And it's this vague memory where the distinct memory is really the emotions that are attached to those times playing in the mud. There was just something about creating with my hands that it just ignited something in me. Mm-hmm. And as I look back over my years of schooling, I've always been kind of interested in creating and drawn to art. But when I went to college, I was encouraged to pursue something that was a little more practical. So I decided on art education because I could get a job, according to others. But when I was in school, through taking the required art courses, ceramics was one of them, and I hadn't really been introduced to it yet. But as soon as I put my hands on the clay, it was like I remembered this feeling from childhood of the joy of creating with my hands, because until that point, it was mostly, I was creating with my hands, but in a 2D form. Yeah. But as soon as I was able to create something out of clay, I just fell in love. Yeah. And I guess that's what brought me to clay.
So when you were in Illinois, did you kind of have the idea of opening up a studio one day and doing what you're doing with The Vessel, or did that kind of idea really first arise once you came to Huntsville?
So it definitely evolved. I knew I loved creating, and through my education of learning about art education, my first job was elementary art teaching. And so I knew I loved sharing art with others, especially people who haven't been introduced to certain types of creating. So I knew that was inside of me. But kind of the story of how I got to where I am now, moving to Huntsville, I was about to have my second baby. Then the pandemic hit, and I just kind of found myself in this dark place. And really, it's my own discovery through my art practice is what led to wanting to share that with others. So through pursuing my art practice and seeing all the good things that came from it, bringing me out of this dark place, I realized I don't want to keep this to myself.
Yeah, I want to share this with as many people as I can.
Yes. And I think through that, through trying to pave my own path in ceramics, it's very difficult to get started in ceramics. The pottery wheel, the kiln, the materials, it's not cheap.
Yeah.
And it's even hard to sometimes know where to start. Like, where do I get this stuff?
Yeah.
And so once I started kind of walking that path and sharing it through social media and stuff, I started to realize there's a lot of people interested in this, and there's a lot of people saying, like, I wish I could do this, but I can't for, fill in the blank. And so it just got me thinking, like, I have access to this stuff. I want to start to share that with people. And that's when I kind of started to get this idea of a community studio. And
I mean, like, I think as far as, I mean, just from the initial, you first kind of getting in, like playing in the mud and kind of having that emotion, I think a lot of people think of, at least I would think of it being more or less the item that you create as being the fun and enjoyable. Like, that's what you're there for. But the emotions you have when you're actually creating it, not necessarily the end result, but the process of the result.
yes.
And I think that's super interesting just to think about. So you have this, you kind of toying around with this idea after during the pandemic, you're wanting to create something, and you've been talking to people about it, sharing about it. When did was the location of Stovehouse and kind of where this community studio will be? Is that always kind of had an idea? Was that always the initial place you had in mind, or were you looking at other places, and kind of what was that process once you kind of went from having this idea and people interested in this idea to like actually having a location?
It's kind of a funny process. So I primarily stay home with my 2 and 4-year-old right now. And so my ceramic art practice has played it's a significant part of my life, but I've had to kind of hold it back a little bit. And this dream of opening the studio, I've had to kind of say, not yet, multiple times. And so when I would be really excited about it, I would like call up some commercial realtor and be like, hey, can you tell me about this space?
Yeah.
So I was kind of like constantly looking, constantly, trying to decide, could I do this? And it was actually when Erica Hardesty opened Noella's Flowers at Stovehouse. I saw her do that, and it just kind of sparked like, if she can do it, I can do it. And so she was like, just reach out, just talk to them. And so this was November last year, and I had reached out to Stovehouse, and we kind of went through the process, and ultimately I decided, I can't do this on my own, because at the time it was just me trying to do this. And so it was, again, another like, not yet.
Yeah.
And once I said not yet to that, then there was another place, and it was like, maybe this could work. We kind of explored that idea. And then again, it was like, no, not yet. And then I actually crossed paths with my now, she's going to kind of be the head of operations, Ashlyn Biggers. We crossed paths, and it kind of came to the table again. Maybe we could do this. And another piece of Stovehouse, Patty Yancey, the owner, or one of the owners, she was so kind. After I kind of said, I'm sorry, but I just can't do this right now. A month later or so, kind of reached out and said, hey, like, we really want to support you. Let us know how we can help. And I said, I could really use some guidance in this whole starting a business thing. And so we met for coffee a couple times. And while that was happening, I met Ashlyn, and it all just kind of, the pieces started to fall together. And so that's a long answer to say it wasn't always Stovehouse, but we were drawn back to Stovehouse because of the support there, and even just being there, the community that is there. And so we're really excited.
I think there's a lot of just like there's like things that just keep on bringing you back. And like, yes, you were looking at other places, and yes, you were kind of thinking like maybe not yet, but then like pieces were falling into place. You were meeting people at Stovehouse. You were like, it just all was like, maybe Stovehouse is the place.
Yeah.
And so it sounds like the initial response people were giving you to the vessel has been really, really a good response to it. As the overwhelmingly majority of people, when you tell them to it, either in passing or people that that you're doing this, or is everyone excited about this idea of having this in Huntsville?
Yeah, I mean, it's so humbling. The response has just been amazing. I mean, I think one of the really fun things about pottery and ceramics is, to a lot of people, it's just really new and interesting. It's something they've wanted to try but haven't been able to. And it feels like there is like this hidden gem that I'm so excited to like unlock for people. But yeah, there's been so much support. I think one of the really great things about Huntsville is how much people value the arts and see, like you said, like you kind of mentioned earlier, for both Ashlyn and I, ceramics is about the process. It's the making. That's why we do it.
Yeah.
The end product is great. And it has its purpose and it's beautiful in its own way. But really we keep coming back for the process of it. And I think that's what people are also interested in. And yeah, I mean, there's just been so much support for it.
Because it's like the stories that you're telling when you're meeting people during the process of making it, the stories you're telling with people while you're making these things. Like yes, you have an end piece of this end result, but then you get to tell all the stories of like the process of you actually doing it, and that's like the fun and exciting things. Those are the memories that you get to have. Like eventually that piece is not going to be there, but you're going to remember that. Like, oh, I remember when I made my first piece at the vessel, and I had this interaction with this person, and now this person's like my best friend.
Yes,
and it's this whole that community that you're able to build around it is a huge aspect of it. And so you kind of settle on Stovehouse as being the location of the vessel. At what point was that, and kind of how has that process of making your vision for the vessel happen at Stovehouse?
So when I first was meeting with Patty, we were kind of chatting like, let's try to turn this 5-year goal into maybe a 1 or 2 year goal. And then all of a sudden it was like, okay, how about 6 months?
Wow.
So it really did happen pretty fast. But at the same time, like Ashlyn and I both have had this dream separately in our hearts. So it feels like it's been a long time coming, but in reality, it's been pretty quick. But like I said, we've had so much support through it. The benefit of my friend Erica, who owns Noella's, having already walked that path has been a huge help in getting us there. Even Oak River Design is at Stovehouse, and he came along and helped us with designing the space. And we've had this community of support, and so what started as a 5-year goal quickly became, let's try and see how we can open in 6 months.
Which is like, it's exciting at one point, but also kind of scary too at the same. Like it
Absolutely.
has those that dynamic back and forth where it's like it's fortunate for you is that you have people, like you said, that have kind of helped guide you. So that 6-month process that is super scary for most people, at least is somewhat navigable. Like you're able to navigate it a little bit better, that you have people there in the community of Stovehouse, community of Huntsville, that have kind of been through it too. Absolutely.
I say it so often, but like we just couldn't do it alone, and we haven't done it alone. And it's been so helpful to have the support of Stovehouse and the other businesses there to kind of help us navigate it all.
So with this quick opening and kind of the process going from a 5-year to a 1 year to a 6-month sort of build out, there's a lot of things that you've kind of put in place to kind of help the funding of the back end of making the vessel an actual thing, like making the community of the ceramic studio a thing for the community to enjoy. And one of those is a Kickstarter. For those that are listening, that maybe don't know very much about Kickstarter or haven't really thought about it in a while, could you explain a little bit about what Kickstarter is and kind of what the vessel is using the Kickstarter for?
Yeah, so Kickstarter is basically I feel like people are familiar with GoFundMe, but Kickstarter is different than GoFundMe because you're not simply donating. Kickstarter is kind of like, I like to explain it as like this large scale pre-order. But basically Kickstarter helps support specifically creative projects to kind of get off the ground, hence the name Kickstart. It helps kickstart a project. And in our case, our project is a community studio. And so our goal is set on Kickstarter in order to front the cost of all of the equipment that we're going to need to get this going. And basically there's different tiers of giving, but any tier you're giving at, you're getting what's called a reward in return. And so that's kind of the idea of the pre-order. So say you pledge $15, well, then you get a tote for that $15. Yeah. But what it's doing is it's giving us the funds up front to front that large cost, and it gives us time to get those products out. And so, you pledge $35 for a mug. Well, you're kind of placing your pre-order for the mug, and then when we open in the fall, we're able to deliver that product.
Yeah.
But in the 3 to 4 months of that happening, it gives us time to purchase the equipment, and then it gives us time to create the product.
Perfect. So. Yeah. So, and I think that's, there's definitely been a few businesses like I would think in Huntsville that have used Kickstarter to kind of help their initial thing like that. But I think it's one of those things that I often forget about, and it's super interesting to see something that's helping the community out with having the ceramic studio, but also you're able to give back to the community at the same time. Mm-hmm. And so like it is that whole interaction with like the vessel is only as good as the community is willing to help invest into it. And so having that interaction back and forth right now before even the doors are even open is a super exciting thing. And a lot of people have helped support you, and there will be information below for those that are listening that want to help support and at least find out more information where they can actually go visit the Kickstarter and donate and kind of pledge and get a mug, get a tote, all sorts of different levels. So you mentioned just a second ago just the idea for the opening of the vessel is this fall. Is that still is everything? Is that still the idea and still the opening date is kind of this fall of opening up to the community?
Yes, that is the goal. So for the month of June we're running the Kickstarter campaign for 30 days, and we're about 7 days in, I think. Yeah, and we're already at we're nearly 40% funded already. Wow. And so, our timeline is kind of tentative on if we can get our Kickstarter funded. And if we do, then the build out will start in July. And then if all goes well, we'll have all that done and ready to go by the fall.
Wow.
So
that's crazy just how quickly things can escalate and move through a process. When some process of like new businesses coming to Huntsville takes so long, and you're able to kind of see this process go from like, hey, it'd be nice to have it in a year, nice to have it in 5 years, to like, hey, in 2022 you're going to open up and own a community ceramic studio.
Yeah.
Like who would have that? Like that's just crazy. Did you always think growing up or in school that you had an entrepreneurial mindset and that you would one day own a business, or is this something that's completely foreign and completely new to you?
This is completely new to me. So, I kind of talked about after having babies, I kind of found myself in this dark place. Basically what led me there was, and I share my story kind of on my website and on my social media, but, this concept of, I was in this mindset that I had to give up everything to be a good mom for my babies. And really where that led me was to not be the best mom I could be. And I gave up creating. I gave up my hobbies and stuff to give it all to my kids. And then once I realized, no, that's not making me the best version of myself, and committed to creating because that's who I was made to be, it really kind of unlocked this new version of myself. And while I was committed to my art practice, I knew that ceramics was an expensive hobby. I knew I was going to have to sell my work. And so, but I didn't know how to do that at all. And I reached out to a mentor friend and said, I don't want to start a business, but can you kind of give me some guidance here? And she's like, you may want to consider starting a business. And that just led me to this whole rabbit hole of learning about creative entrepreneurship, and it just lit a fire in me. I just fell in love with entrepreneurship, and I had no idea it was going to lead me to something so big like a community studio. But it was just kind of this discovery within the last couple of years that I think has always been in me. I hadn't unlocked it yet.
So, I mean, this idea and this process for the vessel it's been it's happened in such a quick amount of time. How much of your success thus far in this journey would you contribute to being in the right place at the right time, and how much would you contribute to your hard work?
That is an interesting question. I think, one thing that I've always wanted to try and communicate, but never knew how, is this whole idea of, as I've announced the vessel, I've had people comment like, "You're living the dream." And I've just thought like, yeah, this is my dream and I get to live it. But I want people to know that I have worked really, really hard to get to this point. Dreams don't just come true by chance. They're worked really hard for. And I think that's what I want to encourage other people with. Like, if you have a dream, you have to chase it. You have to work hard for it. And it can come true. If you're looking at other people living their dreams, it's because they've worked really hard for it most times. And so I do think I can attribute some of the success being in Huntsville, in a community that loves the arts, a community that there's so many entrepreneurs, there's so many local businesses that love to support each other. Even the pottery community has been so supportive. That's what I love about the clay community. It's definitely community over competition. And so I have to attribute it to both. But yeah.
So if someone was to visit the vessel, and obviously the fall is the grand opening and everyone's super excited to kind of see what it looks like, what would the sort of the experience that someone could have at the vessel from, just coming in or doing classes or renting it out? Like, what would that look like?
So our vision for the vessel is, our value is on the community and it's on the experience. And I think that's kind of what I want to make us distinctive. We're not gonna call ourselves some clay school. Education is gonna be an important part to it, and but it's really the process, and it's really what can happen within someone. And so we will have try it classes. Like, people can sign up for one-time classes if they just want a fun date night or a fun girls' night out. They can just come try it. Or people can sign up for extended courses, for someone who is very serious about their hobby or even wants to explore the idea of creative entrepreneurship through pottery. We are going to offer memberships, and that is one of the pieces that I'm so excited about, because that is where the really special community can form. I think Ashlyn and I, both coming from art school, we got a taste of that community through our clay courses, and that I've always wanted to recreate that. And so, I think, people can come experience the process of ceramics through low commitment options and high commitment options. And then another piece of the vessel is going to be our retail shop. And we're going to have a vessel line that Ashlyn and I are going to create, and options for members to sell their work in, and different local, able to support local makers as well. So,
I mean, that's like, I feel like this model is something that Huntsville definitely needed, and it's so interesting just to see like your journey to get here, and as Huntsville's continuing to grow, and your idea for this thing, I think it's the perfect time. The timing is a huge part of it, like you said, like, like you could be in the right place at the right time, but if you haven't had the hard work, then you're going to let those opportunities slip. And so by you being willing to work hard for this idea that you have, kind of putting it on the back burner, saying not yet, and then being able to say like, I think we're actually ready to do this. But then you've worked this hard, you've had all these things happen and lined you up in the right time where you're like, this fall is it. Like I just can't wait. How can people that are listening connect with you, support you in what you're doing, and potentially even help pledge on the Kickstarter?
So right now you can go to our website, which is the Vessel HSV, thevesselhuntsville.com. And there you can sign up for email lists to get notified on when we'll be opening. And we plan to share kind of the progress along the way, the behind the scenes. And then there's also a link to the Kickstarter on that website. And we also are on Instagram and Facebook, also at the Vessel HSV, Vessel Huntsville. And there's links there to get to the Kickstarter. Or if you go to Kickstarter.com, you can search the Vessel Community Pottery Studio. And there's a video there that kind of shares our whole story and vision for the Vessel. And then all the different options to pledge, from totes, t-shirts, mugs, classes, really fun workshops to partner with some local businesses. And yeah.
Well, it's been great learning more about your story and the story of the Vessel. I can't wait to have you on in a couple of years and talk about how the initial opening of the Vessel was and all the success that it has. Like I said, if anyone's listening and they're interested in doing anything like that, like I said, you can visit their social media, their website, their Kickstarter. There's so many different options, and it'll all be linked below. But thank you again so much for sitting down and talking with me. I continue to look forward to the success the Vessel will have, and I look forward to its opening in the fall.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.